and the dinar, meaning the dollars and the pounds. Right? Those who worship it. So he has identified, meaning how does a person worship money? Money becomes the goal in life. It becomes the be-all and the end-all of everything. Everything is judged according to money. Is it going to benefit me monetarily? Is it not going to benefit me monetarily? I do or I don't do, all on the basis of money. Then money becomes our God. And the God may be our desires. As Allah said, أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you not seen the one who takes his desires as his God? Where the person does or doesn't do based on his or her desires. That's what is the deciding factor which controls whether they should do, whether they shouldn't do. It is all based on their desires. Then the desires become our gods. And Shirk al-Asghar, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said in a well-known hadith, the thing I fear most for you is Shirk al-Asghar, minor shirk. The companions asked, O Messenger of Allah, what is minor shirk? He replied, Ar-Riya. Ar-Riya. That is, praying or acting, doing an act of worship for admiration and praise, to impress others. This is called Ar-Riya. And he said, for verily Allah will say on the day of resurrection, when people are receiving their rewards, go to those for whom you are showing off in the material world and see if you can find any reward for them. That practice, Riya, destroys the value of all of our good deeds. And Ar-Riya is something we have to be particularly careful about. As some of the companions like Ibn Abbas said, Riya is like the creeping, or it's more hidden than the creeping of a black ant on a black stone in the middle of a moonless night. This is how subtle it is. More subtle than a black ant creeping on a black stone in the middle of a moonless night. Meaning that it can catch us without us realizing it. Meaning we have to be constantly vigilant to ensure that our practices are free from Riya, things which would expose us to desiring the admiration, the praise, etc. of others. And when we find ourselves in such a situation, then we should say the dua, Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min an nushrika bika shay'a na'lamuhu wa ma la na'lamu wa nastaghfiruka lima la na'lam. That is, Allahumma inna na'udhu bika an nushrika bika shay'an na'lamu wa nastaghfiruka lima la na'lam. O Allah, we seek refuge in you from knowingly committing shirk with you, and we ask your forgiveness for what we do not know about. That represents the basic aspects of shirk in the major areas of Tawheed. Now, what remains for us is looking at shirk in some particular aspects where people have gone astray. One of the major areas wherein people have gone astray in shirk is in the area of, in Allah's names and attributes, is in the area of what we refer to as al-ulu, or the transcendency of Allah. The concept of Allah being above and beyond his creation. A very important concept. Because for the mass of Muslims today, if you ask them where is Allah, their response will be, in general, Allah is everywhere. This is the common response of the mass of Muslims in the world today. However, the belief that Allah is everywhere is in fact the foundation of idolatry. It is a necessary foundation for those who believe in worshipping Allah through His creation. It is explained by this principle or this concept that Allah is everywhere. Now, if we ask, for example, the Hindu who believes in the one absolute God, Brahman, why he is worshipping this idol which he made with his own hands, somebody made for him or whatever. If he is the average Hindu who has not philosophized on the matter, he will just, or she will say, this God brings me good. I worship Ganesh, who is the elephant head God. He has the body of a human being and the head of an elephant. It's popular, Ganesh. And when I pray to him, I get good. My prayers are answered. I get rewards. That's why. No problem. And it's the same thing, same line of argument, which sometimes when you're trying to explain Islam to Christians, they will say, I have experienced God, Jesus, in my life. You understand? You are believing this because you didn't experience Jesus in your life. You know, I have turned to Him, I have prayed, and my prayers were answered. This is my proof. I know that Jesus is God. Right? This is the argument. So for that kind of argument, you take them back to the Hindu. Okay, what about the Hindu who prays to Ganesh and his or her prayers are answered? What do you think? Ganesh is God? Or the animist who prays to the trees or the rivers and their prayers are answered? What do you think? The trees and the rivers are God? Of course the Christian will say no. These are not God. So I said, then who is answering their prayers? The God, real God. It's God who is answering their prayers. Not the rivers and the trees or the idols. It's God. And we say the same thing with Jesus. You think that Jesus is answering your prayers, but it is God who is answering your prayers. And really, the difference between Ganesh and Jesus is only semantics. They're only words. In reality, Jesus was part of God's creation, just as Ganesh and the others are part of God's creation. So in the same way, it wasn't God answering those who prayed to His creation, whether they were praying to stones and sticks or to idols. It is also God not answering, it's God who's answering the prayer and not the individual, the human being who you believe to be God. But now if you speak to the educated Hindu who has philosophized his religion, he studied under a few yogis or whatever, and you ask him or her, why are you worshipping this object of your own creation? They'll say, we're not worshipping it. Please don't misunderstand. We are not worshipping this idol